I'm so f***ing high right now.
You know, 40k is a universe filled with religious fanatics trying to murder everything else in the universe, bugs that are trying to kill everything else in the universe, murder elves that want to, murder everything else in the universe, and space weebs that are trying to get you addicted to big titty anime girls, which in my opinion makes them the worst villain in all of 40k. However, I got my fill of Tau slander in the last video, so I'll chill out. But among all these races stands another race. One full of beings that were tricked into giving up their mortality to live in mechanical bodies. These robots that aren't robots now rise up from their tomb worlds to spread throughout the galaxy. Hell-bent on, let me check my notes real quick. Oh yes, the very original concept of purging all life from the galaxy. How could I have forgotten? But what if I told you these soulless murderbots held a secret weapon against the label of being called a one-note faction? A character whose charisma is so high that you forget 99.9% of his colleagues are completely devoid of anything a person could argue as being considered a conscience. Because where other main characters might run around and one-hand entire armies or have stupidly OP powers that the writers seemingly pull out of nowhere, not our man's here. Don't get me wrong, he will completely obliterate you in a heartbeat if needed, but overall, he truly is just a nerd through and through. Some might even call him more of a collector than anything. You might even say he's the best that ever was at collecting. But seriously, if you've read The Infinite and the Divine, does that story not read like a filler episode for Pokemon? This man feels like he belongs in Team Rocket to me. Am I the only one that read that book and kind of thought that it was more of a comedy more than anything? And that isn't a criticism of the book. I get it, grim darkness of the far future, all that, but this dude's just fun. Because in a setting where everyone's plans boils down to kill everything that isn't us, our man here just wants to collect his little toy soldiers in peace, and as 40k fans, I feel like we can all relate to that. As stated before, he can also blend so seamlessly into the universe because he will absolutely incinerate you without a second thought if you try to stop him. On the flip side though, if he deems you as collectible, he will literally alter reality to get you. Ladies and gentlemen, don't ever stop till you find you a Trazyn. You deserve to be with someone that will literally alter the laws of physics to be with you. Although he does kind of lock up his subjects in a time vault and leave them until he needs them. Maybe not the best relationship advice now that I think about it. But anyways, if you want one of the coolest 40k characters explained in a way that will make any and all lore purists cry out in rage, you're in the right spot. Generic intro over, fun begins now. Like all Necrons, our man's story begins a very long time ago, back when he had a few things like flesh and taste buds, internal organs, a soul. However, back then they were known as the Necrontyr. The Necrontyr were a race of super cancer patients due to the fact that their star had some serious beef with them for absolutely no reason whatsoever, and it totally had nothing to do with some star gods. I would love to go into extreme detail about the Necrons as a whole, but time is limited, so we're going to skip a lot. I shall summarize. Necrontyr got into a serious beef with some space slugs, a small war broke out that engulfed the whole galaxy. Oh, shut up, bitch, it's not your turn yet. The space slugs then had to enlist their children to fight in their wars for them, which, full stop, morally kinda makes me feel like maybe the Necrontyr had a point, just saying. Necrontyr killed a god, found out that was a terrible idea, so they started breaking them into these little shards to use as living batteries. Use the batteries to build Death Stars or something like that. They wiped the space slugs off the playing board, but not before the space slugs rage quit the lobby and hit the reset button on the Robocops. This caused them to take a slight nap that Papa Smurf would have been jealous of. And while I could carry on about our adorable little murderbots here, this does bring us to our mans, who wakes up a little before the rest of his homies and sees this as a perfect opportunity to start pre-looting the lobby. Trazyn tactically acquires so much stuff that even the British are jealous of him. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, well, how is he able to just waltz around the galaxy doing whatever he wants? Aren't Necrons fighting wars like everyone else? And that's a great question, but you see, our man is what's called an overlord, meaning when he says he wants to do something, there's not many Necrons that have the power or the brain capacity to deny him. And as I said, this man is infused with like filler plot energy. Not like main character energy, but he's definitely some good S tier filler plot. Those are like the filler episodes that you actually recommend to people. Case in point for him being filler plot energy, most of the time that he wants to go collect something, it just so happens to be near the target that his dynasty wants to attack anyways. So they just let Trazyn go do his little collecting, which softens up the defenders or draws forces away from their strong points, and then the dynasty just goes in and attacks behind him. Trazyn gets his prizes, the dynasty gets to expand, everyone is happy. So that's pretty much how he's able to just roam throughout the galaxy, collecting anything and everything that strikes his fancy. And this man has a lot of fancies. He is also truly a man of culture because he is grabbing everything from Eldar relics and a few Eldar themselves. Fun fact, one of those little elves that he snatches up is a Canaanite warrior that fought during the War in Heaven. I'm sure that they're just absolutely ecstatic about being a part of his collection. He has various orcs, at least one of which was a war chief back during the War in Heaven, which is also a pretty cool little tidbit. He's got a Thunder Warrior, he's got more than a few Imperial Guard regiments, and yes, you did hear that last word correctly, regiments, not just some platoons or squads, regiments. He has like damn near a whole chapter of space, well, he had a whole chapter, well, we haven't gotten there yet. So for the purposes of the story, he has like damn near a whole chapter of Space Marines. Foreshadowing. He's got some Tyranids, and he even had a device that held an entire Hive Fleet inside of it. He then used this device to unleash the Hive Fleet because he wanted to grow specific organisms within the Tyranids. That plan went about as well as you think it would, and eventually he called it quits after there were a few complications with the subjects. Pretty sure dude's got like an Inquisitor or two. My personal favorite though is he has a clone of the femboy himself, and I believe he's technically uncorrupted by chaos. But if I'm wrong, I'm sure there's about 4 or 5 of you that have already started typing up essays, which I look forward to reading. Now, not every Necron is particularly happy with Trazyn, and no good anime is complete without a great villain. Enter Orikan the Diviner. Senior Diviner here is also an overlord, but he has the added benefit of being a chronomancer. A chronomancer, by the way, is something that my tiny little brain can't really understand. Like, I guess they get to see the future, but not just one future, like all futures, and they can use that knowledge to do things. What things they can do are a mystery to us, but they do things. However, Trazyn pretty much just laughs in this dude's face most of the time, so real powerful ability you got there, brother. Also, total side note here, but I thought Trazyn was a chronomancer all the way up until I started doing research for this video. Turns out he's just a regular overlord, so when he talks about being able to dial back his chronosense, or however it's worded in the book, is that just a basic ability for all Necron overlords? And if it is a basic ability for all Necron overlords, then why don't they use it? Feels like that would be pretty overpowered and make them pretty hard to defeat in combat. Though, in fairness, if half the technology in 40k worked as it was supposed to, or described to in lore, the setting probably would have ended about 30 years back, so side tangent over, back to the video. So Orikan and Trazyn had been beefing for a long time, even before they underwent biotransference, but this turned into a forever beef on the world of Serenade, which was a planet that resonated with a certain numeric frequency, or song if you would. Fun fact about this planet, it had a habit of driving Necrons insane, and if that didn't raise a red flag with you immediately, then you and Trazyn have a lot in common. Because that was one of the things that actually drew his interest to the planet. This is one of those rare instances where Trazyn is chasing knowledge, but knowledge is faster. Good to know that having your soul ripped out of your body and shoved into a shape-shifting toaster doesn't always take away a person's willingness to throw away their life in pursuit of research. Anyways, back to Trazyn, who is providing us with even more evidence that he is just a Poké Trainer in disguise, because he sends out a Gene Stealer to try to take out Orikan, which I kinda low-key feel is more of just a diss than a serious murder attempt. But anyways, Orikan didn't see it that way, so he and the Gene Stealer get to boxing. Orikan doesn't necessarily kill the Gene Stealer, but the Gene Stealer definitely doesn't kill Orikan, and the two just kind of go their separate ways. However, the Gene Stealer gained enough experience throughout the fight to evolve, which it promptly did, becoming a Gene Stealer Patriarch, and the planet's new #1 problem, because if you know anything about gene stealer cults, which I certainly fucking don't, you know that these guys play a huge role in those. As stated, I for one know not a damn thing about gene stealer cults, so I'm basing the rest of this story off educated guesses at best. But back to the patriarch, who is starting up a cult faster than a YouTuber starts up a crypto scam, which in completely unrelated news, I am starting up a crypto coin called Scrubcoin. For legal reasons, that's a joke and I'm not starting up shit. But the stocks on our little gene stealer cult over here are fucking booming. They've grown into a massive infestation and they are now threatening the entire planet. But that's not a problem for Orikan, who is still down in the vault. Can't he see the future? Yep, right here, seeing the future. Wait, fuck that. Beyond that, this dude is a Necron. Does he not have knowledge of the gene stealers? Would he not just know that this is what they do? They're like rabbits, they just fucking breed. Regardless of him being a Necron, he's a chronomancer. Isn't their whole shtick just seeing the future? This should be... Alright, you know what? Whatever. Not gonna focus on it. So the Imperium comes to unleash a little bit of that exterminatus onto the world, and Trazyn is pretty much just sitting back eating popcorn at this point. The Imperium then unleashes its measured response against the Xenos incursion, which subsequently leaves Orikan buried under just a little bit of rubble. It then takes Orikan 100 years to dig himself out of this little pile, but because of his time fuckery shenanigans, it felt more like 2,000 years to him. And I now have to pose the question, after we've seen that he doesn't actually see the future, and that even when he does get to do his little time shenanigans, they just kind of fuck him. Who wants to be a chronomancer at this point? Like, that just doesn't sound like a good idea or a good career investment. Sort of like being a YouTuber. But much like Orikan, I was like, well, fuck it, I hate myself, so why not? Meanwhile, Trazyn is over here just body swapping at will. Oh, did I fail to mention that he could body swap at will? Yeah, he could body swap at will. I mean, they do call him the Infinite for a reason, you know. Shit. At one point, when Orikan is making his drop onto the planet of Serenade, Trazyn swaps over to be one of the pilots of the dude's night scythe, just to troll him. Then when they get planetside and they're riding around on their ghost arc, Trazyn again yoinks one of the bodies of the drivers and is just there to annoy Orikan. Not only is he a Poké Trainer, but he's an S tier troll as well, and you just have to love him for that. However, his trolling skills could never match those of the Deceiver, who was ultimately the one that was behind the tomb upon Serenade in the first place. This fact kinda made Trazyn feel some type of way, so he and Orikan called a truce to deal with the shard. However, Orikan had no intentions of that being a forever thing, as he feels Trazyn kinda did him dirty. Which, I mean, to be fair, you did get buried, I might have felt some type of way too. As it stands for poor Orikan though, he did become part of Trazyn's collection, though I'm not sure how long that's gonna last. It's yet to be determined. We'll see where the story develops from there. Aside from his beef with Orikan though, there was this one time he tried to jack the spear of Vulcan from the Salamanders by sending out text to the Salamanders being all like, yo, I know where yo daddy is. Which, the poor Salamanders, man, they've had to watch their dad die, come back, die again, come back again, only to immediately leave them again. Then you get this robot asshole over here just blowing up your DMs, constantly calling you on live, being like, I know where your daddy is, I know where your daddy is. So the Salamanders eventually lose their patience and they decide they need to go investigate this motherfucker. However, when Forge Father Vulcan Heaston shows up, Trazyn jumps out from behind a corner like,
Surprise, motherfucker.
However, the Salamanders are the children of Space Jesus, so Heaston beats that robotic ass. However, much like Vulcan, Trazyn lives to go rob another day. That ended the short beef between the Salamanders and Trazyn. However, I'm pretty sure it's still on site between the two because the Salamanders are Space Marines at the end of the day. However, that was their only notable scuffle that I could find in my research. There was also another time on the planet of Magugu where some Mechanicum nerds uncovered some Necrontyr ruins, which woke up the Necrons that were sleeping within said ruins. The Necrons are not morning people in the slightest, and so they began to butcher the Skitarii, as one does when they've not had their morning coffee. War breaks out. Big surprise in 40k, I know. Then some of the nerds are sent on, get this, a tactical research mission. Oh, we Americans think we're cool with our Delta Force and our SEAL Team 6. Well, have we ever thought about investing in Scholar Team 6? The Taliban would have stood no chance against the power of books. I've heard knowledge and literature are the kryptonite to terrorists. Because fuck fighting a war, we need research. Anyways, since Mechanicum devoted most of their efforts into stacking up their research, the Necrons saw this and just started to rush spam tier 2 heavies. This led to the Necrons gaining a tactical superiority, and the true slaughter begins. Now, as this glorious slaughter is happening, in walks our man Trazyn, who is just stalking the tech priests that were sent out on these little Black Ops research missions behind enemy lines. And I just want you for a moment to picture this. You've been deployed on a one-way research trip. You're now listening to everyone you know getting slaughtered over your comm system. Then you hear this cheerful robotic whistling coming from the hall behind you. Probably like Tiptoe Through the Tulips or some shit like that. Your fight or flight instincts kick in, and since you're a tech priest, flying is your only option. So you proceed to start running for your life as the whistling is just constantly right behind you. Then as you're catching your breath from behind a corner, the whistling suddenly stops. And like all good horror movie characters, you peek from around the corner thinking that you're suddenly safe for whatever reason, only for Trazyn to pop up and be like, well, you look awfully collectible. He then throws the ball at you and you just get sucked into this little pocket dimension. Anyways, filler over, onto the juicy bits. So there was this time during the 13th Black Crusade that our man actually decided to make a temporary alliance with the Imperium to fight against Chaos. Now, why would he do such a noble thing, you ask yourself? Well, it's simple. If Chaos wins, they'll kill everything, meaning that Trazyn won't be able to collect more stuff. Trazyn really likes to collect stuff, therefore Trazyn doesn't want Chaos to win. And he even donated a lot of his stuff. Wait, did I just say donate like he didn't kidnap these people and leave them locked in a time? What? This is 40k, there's no morals here. Anyways, he used a lot of his collection in an attempt to stem the tide of Chaos. A lot of those guard regiments that we talked about earlier, yeah, dead skis. Them Marines we talked about, yep, they dead now. He also had a Custodes in his collection, and I believe that that too was also sacrificed during this time, but y'all let me know down in the comments. Unfortunately, as the fighting raged on, he saw his efforts would make no more of an impact, and he promptly got the fuck out of there. However, as he was leaving, he saw Creed laying on the ground, and he was like, well, you look submissive and collectible. Scooped him up for his collection, dipped out. However, on his way out, he looked over and saw the big homie Abby Dabby himself. Trazyn being Trazyn, couldn't help himself, tried to go collect him. However, Abby Dabby is not as submissive and collectible as the rest of them. So that one didn't exactly play out for our man Trazyn. And while Cadia tapped out from the pounding that they were taking from Abby Dabby, Mr. 13 Black Crusades that ain't really doing shit in the grand scheme of things eventually fucked back off into the warp, allowing our hero to continue collecting all of his Pokemon in peace. Smooth transition. This leads us perfectly to the time that Trazyn was collecting his artifacts when he inadvertently saved a planet from an orc incursion. Now, I'm going to level with you here. I can't remember exactly what he was on the planet to collect in the first place because it's about 3 o'clock in the morning. However, for the purposes of this story, we're going to say he was there to collect Pickle Rick. Trazyn the Infinite wanted the legendary Pickle Rick for his collection, and so he went about repeatedly mollywhopping the orcs until they grew tired of tasting his metal cock. Now, the orcs being the orcs, this took a really long time for them to learn that lesson, but eventually they did get the memo that they were constantly going to taste robot cock, so they fucked off. Now, during all of this fighting, Trazyn dropped his wallet, but our man was a little bit too focused on his collection and the fighting to worry about things like identification and payment. A few hundred years go by and he's like, oh shit, I dropped my wallet back on that one place. So he goes back to get his wallet and he finds that the humans there had erected a statue in his honor. He was a little peeved that they turned him into a space marine in their version of events, but he let it slide. And I was unable to verify this, but I do believe he still possesses Pickle Rick. If true, this would make Trazyn the Infinite the default protagonist of the 40k setting, upgrading him from a filler art character to a main character. Regardless of his Pickle Rick status, he will always remain the protagonist in my heart though. Our man here has been on many more adventures and has many more wondrous things within his inventory of bullshit. However, I've wasted far too much of your time, and as the title suggests, this has been Trazyn the Infinite, poorly explained. Thank you all so much for your time. Thank you to anyone that subscribed. I know it doesn't have any real meaning, but seeing the numbers go up makes my little neurons fire in happiness. I plan on doing nothing but slandering the wannabe Primarch in the next video because someone requested that I purely just talk shit about Lorgar for 15 minutes. My man didn't ask for lore or nothing, he just wanted slander and insults, and by God, that is a cause I can get behind. My good sir, if you're out there, I do hope to do it justice for you. Hopefully that one won't take me several more weeks to put together, but this ship is held together by duct tape and dreams, and to be completely honest with you, I'm out of both. If you've made it to this part of the video, do me a huge favor and comment, pineapples deserved better. Purely to confuse people that didn't watch to this point, and so I can see how many of you actually made it to this point. That is all. Thank you very much. Hugs and kisses. Bye.